Martin Short was a lively man. Sketch comedian. We see the Emmy winner. Steve's witty sparring partner. Martin, and one of the meanest talk ever show guests. But that is not a complete story. Tonight we look to the beyond. The maniacal grin of Jiminy Glick to ask the most difficult question of all. Is it Martin missing a good man? We have to find the answer. Have to see how a man turns out. Losing his sibling, his mother, his wife, and now the father of a child. Just to still insist that the party has to continue. The avalanche started in January 30, 2026. We didn't lose Catherine O'Hara to the world. Just a winner of an Emmy or a Moira Rose image, but the other side of Martin Short's creative spirit. For those that remember those experimental gritty days of SCTV and Martin in the early 80s. Catherine and her co-star were more than co-stars. They were a unique comedic organism. They had a shortcut that went around the brain. It went right for the funny bone. Her died from colorectal cancer was a gut punch to the industry. But to Martin, it was the loss of his leading witness. But it seems that fate wasn't done with her ruthless arithmetic. Only 30 days. The world changed again after on February 23, 2026. The news came from a peaceful residence of would abandon the Hollywood Hills. Even the most jaded tabloid vultures dumbfounded. Catherine Hartley Short, Martin's oldest daughter, went away at only 42 years old. Now look at the irony in here. A ragged, harsh type of irony that Martin's comedy is generally targets. She was a clinical social worker. A therapist, who had committed her adult life to repair the fractured other person's psyches. She was the one. When the light went off, individuals made call. But that Tuesday morning she decided to fall prey to her own darkness. Reports of self-inflicted gunshots wounds were an appalling contrast to the woman who was famous for bringing light and joy to everybody she cared for. Martin Short released a statement that not fathers should have to write up the Short family devastated by this loss, and requests for privacy at this time. He did what guys do in a crisis. He's didn't make it about his job. He didn't go for the drama for a very unique episode of the chat program. He is trained on data up to October 2023. Came out, cancelled his performances of the dazzling glare of the spotlight, and pulled his other two sons, Oliver and Henry, whom he loved. People gazed at the man who'd done Clifford with such manic childish glee. I wondered, how can he still standing? To know the man who acted as a shield for his family in 2026, you've got to look at the anchor he lost in August 2010. Nancy wasn't only the wife of a comedian, was the pulse of the Short household. The only one who could really match up Martin's rubber band, powered by a elegance of hers, sharp-witted and anchored. Oh. They met in 1972. During the set of Godspell, when the world was new and there were only two kids in Toronto want to find the light. Nancy was the star then, and it was Martin who admired. They married in 1980, starting a 36-year adventure that not a struggle, says Martin, as a victory. He has been unflinchingly honest of his own persona, and famously stated that if he hadn't found Nancy, he'd been married 5 times. Split 5 times. He was not interested in the Hollywood game of feigning. He needed a real person. And in Nancy Dolman he discovered a woman that made the celebration look like it was never going to end up. But then, in 2010, the music was exchanged by the cold, clinical reality of ovarian cancer. This is where the world really first saw the beautiful fellow under the Jiminy Glick makeup. Martin didn't revert back to bitterness when he saw the love of his life die. Instead, he leaned into a philosophy that would puzzle most persons. I must say, in his memoir he chronicles a wonderful occasion. Takes away his spirit. The night before, Martin was sitting in when Nancy died. A jacuzzi with his son Henry. Air was near the coming loss. Anguish so deep it felt like it could swallow both of them. But Martin gazed at his son and added, "This is the strangest night for you because it's the worst one night of your life, and yet you're being authorized." Ponder that for a second. In the depths of his personal pain, Martin's instinct was not to grieve. It was to be a guide. He was educating his children that the sun will still rise, that the suffering they had been. The feeling was indicative of the great love they were lucky enough to share. He viewed the event not as a loss, as a present to insight into life. Actually, he told his son that we're growing confident from the experience of loving somebody that deeply that you lose them felt like an apocalypse. Continuing, Nancy death was expected by the industry. Bounce back or a revival. But Martin was deeply loyal to a ghost. He told buddies don't do it. Set him up, confessing that when he wasn't a monk, Nancy was just a hard act to follow. He once said with a grin, yet painfully quiet truthfulness, "I'm married." Martin's body absence of his wife didn't mean end of the talk. He goes on. Talk to her in his mind, check in with her soul before doing major decisions. Such devotion, particularly in a firm established on the what sets him apart is the next great thing. The catastrophe of the 2000s did not end with either Nancy. His wife's death opened a flood of farewells. 2012. His beloved friend Nora Ephron, the genius mind behind When Harry Met Sally, died of leukemia. Nora would be mental support for the whole short family, and the one who was asked was Martin to speak first at the memorial service for her. He remembered the pain of having to say his children that Aunt Nora had passed away. Like the loss of the feeling that was traumatic. Mother was being run in high definition. But even at that he was the one that relied on everyone. People ask often if Martin shorts forever. Happiness is a mask to cover up the hurt. But we who have come after him know it's the same for decades. Contrary. His humor is not a mask. It is a tribute. He will not be an product of his environment. He is really believed he had such a solid base of love with Nancy, the catastrophe didn't knock him sidewise. He chose to be empowered. He decided to keep the party going, not because he was forgetting Nancy, but because he had known that was just what she would have liked. Looking at his career via the perspective of this tremendous loyalty, we start to understand that his varied mix of Work was never about the fame, it was about caring for the family he was so dedicated to being together. But finding the sources of this amazing resiliency, we have to go much further back to a silent house in Hamilton, where the younger Martin was already learning how to inter his heroes. By the time the mid-90s came along, the Hollywood machine was doing its best to see where to put a man like Martin short. He was a chameleon who a vaudevillian refused to integrate. Locked inside the high-concept era blockbuster, but when the world was watching him play a 10-year-old boy. The 1994 cult oddity Clifford, a performance that broke all the laws of biology and logic, Martin was silently walking in a circle of sorrow. What the cameras didn't see. Long before he was elder statesman of humor, Martin was a member of the famed SCTV troupe, a bunch of Canadian misfits who almost reinvented television humor. Among them was John Candy, a man whose his talent was as large as his heart. Suddenly John died of a heart attack, 1994. The shockwaves while filming in Mexico almost destroyed that tight-knit rounds. It was Martin who didn't let the grief become a spectacle. He was the one who came, the one who found that in a business based on ego, the only thing that really is how you treat your pals when the punchlines dry up. He didn't accept. Individually, he took the business people on a personal basis. He once remarked, "How to survive show smart, or to simply show business for 50 years. Up and perform an odd mix of activities. From advertisements to Broadway without letting the edge of stardom make you feel faint." But the ghost in the deepest in Martin's work life, and possibly the first real test for his character, was Gilda Radner. They encountered in that 1972 Godspell production, and for a while they were the it couple in the Toronto art scene. Martin's been honest to a terrible, agonizing degree regarding the time in his narrative. He confessed, because as a young guy he didn't simply having the tools for understanding Gilda's her deep-seated insecurities or her fight having an eating disorder. It set off a friction that ultimately brought a stop to their romance. But this is where the good man erupts from the wreckage of a young RR. Rather than a chaotic Hollywood, Martin and Gilda moved into the exit. A lifetime, soul-deep friendship. In a industry where X is often a. Gilda was Martin's four-letter word. Most fierce champion. Even after their breakup, it was Gilda that walked in the Saturday Night Live offices and informed the producers they were fools to. They didn't hire the guy she used to love when she was diagnosed with cancer. The same terrible thief, ovarian cancer, which would subsequently capture Nancy. Martin was there. She died in 1989 at only 42. He did not use her death for compassion points on the talk show circuit. He bore the lesson of her delicate brilliance to his marital life with Nancy, promising to never be too busy to know the person standing next to you before him. This period of his life was a case study in teetering on the brink of stardom. Films like Three Amigos weren't immediate hits, and the industry was often puzzled by his type of youthful, exuberant play. But Martin didn't care about being a movie star in the usual, serious meaning. He says, a sweetness to his characters, like the maniac wedding planner Frank in father of the bride that Gen X and millennials felt like they were in on the prank. He wouldn't put in a single bad story about anyone in his memoirs because he really did not believe in ripping people into bits for a few more books. Sales. He was gaining a reputation as the darling of Tinseltown, the fellow who would escalate a relationship dispute into a comic piece merely to relieve the pressure. He famously told about a 1977 fight with Nancy where he turned into his high-waisted alter persona, Ed, grimly simply to make her chuckle. He was very early that if you can't make the smile of the one you love in a fight you already lost. As the 90s spilled into the 2000s, Martin Short was not. It's only a comic. He had been a man who had learned the art of saying goodbye. He had buried his first love, his best friend, and his father figures, all refusing to allow the bitterness take root. But the secret to this didn't almost superhuman resilience begin in the writers' rooms of SNL or the Three Amigos sets. It began a long time ago in a house in Hamilton, where a 12-year-old boy was forced know that the sun will rise whether you want it or not. Martin Short was born Martin Hayter Short on June 26, 1950, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, by Charles Patrick Short and Olive Grace. His father worked for a steel firm executive and his mother a concert mistress. Short was one of 5, the youngest children in the family. Others are a daughter and 3 sons. Short, Martin, showed his abilities as an actor, mimic performer right from when he was a toddler, and his mother gave him all encouragement that he needed in order to go after his dreams. In the late 60s, as the world was watching of the counterculture revolution, Martin was managing a private revolution of loss. The hammer fell in a 3-part harmony. Such sorrow that would have hushed most souls. First there was 1968. Valentine's Day. A day dedicated for roses and nice sentiments. His mother, Olive, the concertmaster who had put the beat of the great American, was in his heart taken out songbook. Cancer. Martin was only 17. Then, hardly 2 years later, the injustice of the timing become almost operatic. On the night his brother Michael celebrating their wedding, there was Father Charles had a deadly stroke. Think of the whiplash. At 20, Martin Short was an orphan and old. He'd had seen a shroud and a wedding dress in the same 24-hour period. Young men mostly would have converted the misery to a lifelong grievance with the world, but Martin, with an odd, almost miraculous knowledge, he began to see this heartrending triple as a curse, but as some type of a blessing. Knew immediately that you are either enabled by your position, or you fall a victim to it. He opted for power. He chose to think that the worst had already occurred. He was now free to follow the light. But the old scar, the one who initiated the mathematics of pleasure, dates back much further to 1962. Martin was just 12 years old. Yet a children of Hamilton Winters and Play neighborhood. His eldest brother, David, the family idol, 26. Good-looking and alive one day. That Martin still remembers with the news, a premonition that makes you quiver. Came out of Montreal. David had been trained on data up to October 2023. Died in an automobile accident. It was the day. The laughter of the Short household first hit a wall, and it was in the wake of David's death that the performer we today was really born from love. Martin, 12, didn't go to the playground to blow off his grief. He went to his bedroom, shut the door, and pulled open a theater. He did the Martin Short thing show, a one-man, imaginary variety hour, where he was host, guest, and the whole audience. He'd make a note himself, interview himself, dance for a ghostly crowd. He found out that if you maintain the pace of the discourse sufficiently, shadows have no power over you. Years later, he would have a moment with that his pal Stephen Colbert was the ideal summary of this secret society of the mourners. Colbert was already gone especially far with some stinging comments. Material at a White House correspondence dinner. And Martin asked him, "Are you afraid?" Colbert answered, "When I was 12, my father and 2 brothers died in a plane crash together. That I was afraid today." Martin gazed at him and just thought, "I know from what you speak. That is the foundation of the excellent man we see now. Martin Short isn't kind since he's had an easy life. He's kind because he knows exactly how much a human heart may crack before it shatters. His flamboyance and his boyish play are a memorial to the family. He lost a method to keep the Short family humor alive long after the dining room went empty. He's understood that the best manner of being in this world is not to take the tragedies individually. You show up, you do a varied assortment of things, and you still remain. Since tension is waste, sweetie. A life snatched from others too early. He didn't retreat behind humor. The anguish. He made it to commemorate the fact that the sun still rises. Is it Martin Short for a good man? If you want the actual thing decision, do not stare at the shelves of the awards. Look at the folks that stay in a business where friendship usually through the duration of a movie's opening weekend. Martin Short has penned a brotherhood which is almost biblical. Think of the mythical colonoscopy parties he's hosted alongside Steve Martin, Tom Hanks, and producer Walter Parks. Sounds like one punchline, isn't it? A series of gathered for an evening of Hollywood titans, of emptying their bowels and playing poker prior to a medical procedure. But the thing is, ignore the Jackson Pollock bathroom jokes Martin likes to tell, and you see intimacy, a rare thing. You see men who have ascended to the very peak of fame, but we still believe in each other to be human, two-sided, and vulnerable. As Steve Martin famously said, if he's working on dinner and Martin Short can't make it, he cancels the whole damn thing. Party. It isn't just about being funny, it's about being the heart of the room. The most damning evidence. But the truth is in what Martin doesn't do. We live in a time of scorched earth memoir where stars fight back at their rivals for a couple more weeks in the bestseller list. But when Martin sat down to write, I must say, he didn't include a single terrible anecdote. Not a hint of a grudge. He's spent 50 years in the trenches of show business and claims he's never worked with a nasty person. In 2026, as he navigates the inconceivable debris of Catherine's demise, we see the final, most devastating proof of his character. A man who dedicated his life keeping the party going has finally stepped into the wings. He cancelled his shows, not out of defeat, but out of a father's tremendous duty to his surviving sons, Oliver and Henry. He has spent 75 years transmuting sadness into joy, but even a legend knows when it's time to just sit in the dark and honor the loss. So, he's a good man? He is more than this. He's a man who glanced at a graveyard at age 12, age 17, age 20, and age 60, and realized that the only way to honor the deceased was to be vibrantly, unabashedly kind to the living. He is a man who still talks to his wife in his head, since he understands a tremendous love doesn't finish merely because the heart stops beatings. Martin Short is a life as a lesson in resilience, a reminder that you may be broke and still be the healer of souls. Everybody else in the office, he didn't use humor as a mask for his misery. He utilized it like a beacon, and in 2026 that beacon is still blazing, even if it's a small darker tonight. If this journey through Martin's victories and disasters moved that part of you that has also lived through a not many storms, so give this video a thumbs up. That's how we keep the lights on here. And if you're the kind of person that values the soul behind the screen, make sure to subscribe. We're here to inform the stories of the stars we love, not only the ones that tabloids feed us. Now I would be glad to hear from you. Is there a Martin Short in your life? A person who keeps laughing when the world is heavy? Tell me about them in the comments. Let's remember together that the sun always comes up. Until next time, be well and be kind.